Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. All right, guys, here we go. Third video in the Sunday sessions for One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. As always, send your questions to me, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. Any of my social media, YouTube comments below, and go to thealchemistcabinet.com to the warehouse and buy the new 2025 Practical Distiller's Almanac or any of my other books there. I have a very long email here, but it's a very good email, and I think I've got some answers for Randy here. So I'm going to get into reading the email, and then I will answer the questions after I get through it. So, hey, Alan, got the 2024 Almanac a couple weeks ago and have been enjoying it greatly and looking forward to receiving 2025 edition. Let me say, guys, I do apologize. I know some people ordered the Almanac late in the year last year, and we were having a lot of problems with Amazon getting anything done and getting, as a matter of fact, they lost an entire shipment of books coming to us at one point in time, and we had to reorder them. We are switching publishers. At some point in time, we will go from, we're not going to be offering like the book to come to me first and me sign it and send it to you guys. It'll just come directly to you. And if you guys want it signed, you can then send it to me. I'll sign it and send it back out to you, etc. We'll figure out something like that. But I am working as hard as I can. Bear in mind, I've never been a real author or anything of that nature. I'm working as hard as I can to figure out this book publishing thing, as is my wife, Kim. She's really putting a lot into that. And we will get it down to a hard science and high efficiency before this is over with. So looking forward to receiving 2025 edition. I just ordered the Alchemist Cabinet Volume 2, The Black Forest Method. Awesome. And we'll order Volume 1 in the future. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that. It helps us out a lot. Least I can do to support One Piece at a time. I'm sure I'll benefit greatly from all the extra information, so it's more to my benefit than yours. Well, thank you. Now to my point. I ordered a 5-gallon all-wood barrel at the end of December from a supplier in Maine. I'm sure you know who they are, but I won't mention their name here. I'm planning on using one actual all-wood 5-gallon barrel in combination with several of the new 5-gallon barrels from Badmo. Yeah, those are good barrels too, man. I've got a couple of those. Just received a custom sherry cask 5-gallon Badmo that I'm really excited about. Man, their sherry cask stuff is phenomenal. It's really, really good. I can't hardly get stuff like that on the market with large barrels. So to make a Solera style all malt whiskey that will consist of a line of several barrels with an average age of the Solera increasing as I add more Badmo barrels every year. I've recently been able to increase my spirit run capacity, consisting of 3 stripping runs, up to 5 gallons of spirit in a single run, after cuts and proofing down using my recently upgraded 29-gallon modular still. See the attached short videos. I put together with a lot of advice from you. Much thanks. All this in a very small apartment kitchen, I might add. That is awesome. The all-wood barrel I received previously mentioned was advertised on their website to be a previously used bourbon barrel from a small craft distillery, and was guaranteed to be wet and leak-proof, inspected before shipment. Instead, I ended up getting a new oak barrel that wasn't wet with bourbon and was dry on the inside. Disappointing, especially with what I paid for this all-wood barrel. I inquired and was told that the barrel probably came from a lot purchased from a craft distillery and probably was never filled before the distillery moved up to larger barrels, which I can understand, but the barrel was supposed to be inspected and was guaranteed to be wet when shipped. Sadly, mine was not. That's frustrating. I decided to try and make the most of it, and I went ahead and installed a very nice but expensive stainless spigot. Those are high dollar for sure. I ordered along with the barrel so I could draw off samples easily like you can with Badmo barrels. My thought is to use the all-wood barrel early in the maturation process to increase the micro-oxygenation and possibly evaporation before going into a line of Badmo barrels in the Solera, slowing the whole maturation process down to a normal rate. As you can tell, I've given this a lot of thought. What is your opinion of my plan with the Solera system? Sorry I haven't got to my main question yet, but wanted to fill you in on how I plan on using this all-wood barrel in my entire process first. All right, so I'll stop there and address that first before we get into the rest of the email. I think it's a great idea. So the only thing I'd be cautious of is it's only a 5-gallon. So it's going to extract really quickly initially, especially since it's a new oak barrel. If I were to go into it first, I would not go into it for very long. I would look at that as sort of like adding, wood chips or wood blocks to a jar or something, sort of preloading the spirit with oak. So I might go into it the first several times just for a short amount of time initially to preload everything with oak and then go to the Badmos. As that barrel gets more spirit going through it, that problem's going to solve itself. But then what I would do is after you go through the Badmos, as you're finishing out product before bottling, then I would go to that all wood barrel for the oxygenation, right? At the very end of the process, especially once you're not worried so much about extracting too much tannin and that sort of thing, wood sugars, etc., and throwing everything off balance, if that makes sense. So once you've used that barrel maybe 6, 7 times, 8 times, whatever, that problem of over extraction shouldn't be that much of an issue anymore. It will almost over time sort of become almost a neutral barrel, but it'll have some house character of the previous spirit that's been in there. Or you could even look at doing something like, if you want to increase tannin levels, once that barrel starts to get a little wore down, one of the things they do, for example, in Normandy for Calvados is they will actually use the big barrels, the big tonneau barrels that they fermented their cider in with skin contact, as an aging or maturation vessel for adding tannin back to the spirit on the finish before bottling, and the tannins all coming from that apple. So you could even look at doing something like that, like filling it up with some apple cider that's been fermented on the skins, or with really tannic apples or things of that nature, just to add some more characteristic back to it in the future. Or even put some sherry in there, let it set for a little while, and that sherry will also help seal up that barrel too, because of the amount of sugar that is in there, plus as we'll get to here in a minute, you mentioned barrel candy, and I will address that too. So after filling the barrel with hot water to soak and allow it to swell, I noticed it had several leaks between the staves of the barrel, and at the very end of the staves, as well as a couple of leaks between the staves and the head on both ends. The leaks got better over several days of being filled. I soaked the outside of the barrel several times as well, but stayed moist in most of the original leaky places, even after a couple of weeks of soaking. I was able to stop one of the really bad leaks that looked like a wormhole right next to the bung with a toothpick. The barrel was guaranteed not to have any wormholes and should have been noticed being right next to the bung on inspection. Can you tell my frustration? I decided to test the barrel further by adding a small amount of pressure, as the barrel would normally experience going through temperature changes and changes in barometric pressure by blowing through the spigot and closing the tap, maintaining some pressure on the inside. This caused the now moist spots to visibly leak. I'll attach some photos with the pressure applied. The supplier has agreed to send me another barrel, which is great. And I specifically asked him to make sure it was a wet 5-gallon bourbon barrel and inspected prior to shipping. That's what I paid for and expected. Absolutely, man. Hopefully this next wood barrel will be much better than the first. I probably got spoiled with the Bad Mo barrels. I had a problem with the discounted Bad Mo barrel I bought from Christopher, and he sent a replacement right out. No questions asked. That's great service. You're absolutely right. And Bad Mo is fantastic about that. Christopher is great about taking care of customers, just as Benjamin was, and he really believes in his product. And if you have a problem, he's going to solve that problem for you. He's going to figure it out and help you with it in any way he can. That's why I speak so highly of Bad Motivators. Just good people and good product. Finally, my main question, in addition to the one above about my Solera process, I was thinking about filling this somewhat leaky barrel, at least when some pressure is applied, with a spirit, possibly rum, storing it inside where it won't go through much, if any, temperature changes. Hoping the barrel might seal itself up as barrel candy, I believe that's what you call it, forms on the outside. What are your thoughts concerning this barrel? Also, any other ideas how I might be able to better seal up this barrel, like with beeswax, for instance, or should I consider this barrel a lost cause? Any other thoughts you might have for another use for this barrel will be appreciated. These are my first and possibly only all-wood barrels I will purchase and use as part of my Solera process, so my experience with them is minimal at this point. Again, sorry for my long-windedness, but I wanted you to fully understand my intention for use of these barrels. Thank you for your consideration and all that you do for the community. Well, you're welcome, man, and I appreciate the long email. Absolutely. So, as far as sealing that barrel, most of the time you can get them to seal to a greater degree or less, right? There may still be some small leak, and a lot of times the barrel candy does take care of it. If you're not worried about having a new oak barrel, there's nothing wrong with, like I said, filling that barrel, for example, with some sherry or some other kind of wine that you can buy at a decent price or make at a decent price. The sugars in there will really help seal that up quite a bit. You can do it with spirit, but you're going to lose more of it. Always remember, spirit's a lot thinner than water, and spirit's a lot thinner than wine is, so more of it's going to come out during that process. You had the right idea with the wormhole with the toothpick. You might be able to reach out to one of the cooperages, like maybe somebody like Zach Cooperage, to buy a barrel repair kit too. So a barrel repair kit will usually come with cedar spiles, cedar wedges, sometimes cattails, sometimes paraffin wax, sometimes beeswax. You can seal a lot of the stuff between the staves. Well, you can take a hammer sometimes and you can hit those staves, and sometimes they'll realign and they'll stop leaking. If they're not leaking bad, a lot of times beeswax or something like that will seal them up, but you don't want to do it across the entirety of the barrel because that's going to cut off the oxygen. Sometimes it's a matter of putting one of those cedar wedges in there, or typically a lot of times between staves, the cooperages will use cattail reeds. So you could specifically look for cattail reeds, but you'd have to loosen the barrel to get the cattail reed in there and then retighten the barrel. So there's a lot of coopering that's going to be involved with trying to seal something like that if it doesn't want to seal of its own accord, or it can't be sealed with a wine or something of that nature. For the wormholes or little pinholes and stuff like that, you can literally drill those out and get one of those cedar spiles, just like you did with a toothpick, and drive in there. That'll often stop that process. And even if it doesn't stop it initially, eventually that spile will swell up and solve that problem. I've only ever had a few barrels in my career that I couldn't get to stop leaking, but it does happen from time to time. If you can't get it to stop leaking, honestly, what I would do, and it sucks, but if you can't get it to stop leaking, probably cut it up and use it as an oak additive is what I would suggest. Or cut it up and use it for, propagating yeast. Use it as a magic yeast log. Use those various staves for different yeast strains and stuff like that to keep those going. There's always a use for something somewhere. Unfortunately, that does seem to be a waste unless it's an absolute necessity. Sometimes that barrel candy will seal up a barrel, but the question is, how much spirit do you lose before it finally does seal up? And by God, I've run out at least a half barrel of stuff before trying to do this because I get busy doing other things, forget to check it, etc., and come back and be like, man, it never did seal. Or when it finally did seal, it was literally half a barrel gone, which is heartbreaking. And then the other part of that too is that when barrel candy seals a barrel, if you have a big barometric pressure shift again, probably going to unseal it. So stick with the Badmo stuff if you can, is what I would say. But try to save that barrel. Try to. There's no reason not to. Like I said, reach out to some of these cooperages. I'm surprised that there's not somebody selling coopering repair kits to home distillers at this point. I would think that might be a common thing. Maybe that's something for Christopher at Badmo. Maybe he can provide something like that. But Zach Cooperage, I know, has that stuff on hand. I don't know what they would charge for it or if they would even sell to a private person, but might be worthwhile to reach out and touch base to him, see if you can get a barrel repair kit. It's worthwhile to have on hand. So, all right, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it. Love you. Later.